Hello everyone, this is Samirin, and this is episode 5 of our Building a Toy Box from Scratch series. And in this episode, I believe our plan is to start using that dynamic trigger area that we have up there, and we're going to start using it to be able to control the townspeople. And the idea here is that the townspeople, as they walk across this bridge here, when they're in the circle area we have attached to our camera, I want the player to be able to move them either away from the camera by pushing up or towards the camera by pushing down. And so we're going to add that logic in this time. Now, the way we're going to do that is the same way we're pushing the townspeople across the bridge, and that would be using a Weathervane. But we're going to need 2 of them. And since this is going to be a whole new other circuit, let's move to another portion of our screen here. So we're going to need one Weathervane that is pushing towards the camera, and one that is pushing away from the camera. Now the difference between this Weathervane and this one, which is currently running for some strange reason, just push the button and it turned off. There we go. Anyway, the difference is while we're using the option to push any friend or enemy this direction with this Weathervane, we don't want to use the same option with these Weathervanes because we want to only control the townsperson that is in our circle area or the range of our dynamic trigger that we've placed here. Any townsperson that's not within that trigger area, we don't want to affect them. So we can't say just any AI or friend. We're going to have to actually switch to triggering actor on these ones. And let's change this value. We're going to change it to 4 for now. I'm thinking we're going to want it even less than that, but we're going to try 4 for now. And we got to do it to both of them, of course. Triggering actor, 4. Now here's the real trick, is how do we keep the triggering actor information of a townsperson that is in the dynamic trigger area, and then get rid of it when the player's left the dynamic trigger area. What we're going to do is we're going to build a loop that is going to hold on to that triggering actor information while the townsperson is in the trigger area, but when they exit, it will dump that information. So how we're going to do that is with some logic gates. It's almost a logic chain we're making here, but it's going to work a little differently. So I'm going to use 3 logic gates, and I'll explain why I'm using 3 in a second here. And we're just going to do the output of one goes to the input of the second. The output of the second goes to the input of the third, and the output of the third is going to go into the input of the first. So we've got a loop going. As soon as we send a signal to this logic gate, it will start looping that signal forever. So we are going to say from this dynamic trigger, entered AI, and since we're using friendly townspeople, let's say friend, input. So now anything that enters this trigger area is going to hit this logic gate and start looping that triggering actor information again and again and again and again for eternity. But we want it to not do it forever. So we're going to say when an AI friend exits, we're going to close this last logic gate, which will mean the signal will come out input blocked, now output, it won't circle back around, and our loop is done. But we want this logic to be smart and to recover itself instantly. So if another townsperson very quickly comes into that dynamic trigger, we want it to be ready to go to pick up that signal and start looping it again. So what we're going to do is, since we know there's going to be a signal looping through here, we're going to say an input blocked signal is going to open the logic gate in the middle. And if the logic gate in the middle opens, it's going to open the last logic gate. So we close it, and it waits until that signal that's looping hits the last logic gate, and it'll come out input blocked, which will open this logic gate, which will open the next one, so the whole circuit is ready for a new signal to arrive. So we've got this logic working pretty good so far. Now what we're going to do is we're going to make two little logic chains down here. We'll make one and two. I'm going to move these weather vanes so that we have a good idea of what's doing what here. So what we want to happen now is every time the signal loops that has the triggering actor information, we're going to send that signal with the triggering actor information to the top logic gate of both of these logic chains that we're going to build. So the output is going to input to the both. Now, we want nothing coming out of these outputs. So by default, the signal comes down to them and gets dumped out the output, which nothing is attached to, so nothing happens. So 99% of the time, this signal is just going to be continually feeding a triggering actor information to these logic gates, and they'll be dumping it. No use for it whatsoever. It seems wasteful, but it allows us to do some pretty crazy things. So I'm going to put the input blocked of both the top logic gates to the logic gate below. And what I'm going to say is, similar to what I did with the left and right circuit, as I'm going to make these things smart. So if I send an open to the bottom one, it knows it has to close the top one. And if I send a close, it knows it has to close the top one again. We're making this circuit so it's super smart. You only have to send a signal to one of those logic gates and it will figure the rest out. But these logic chains we're going to make even smarter. And the reason is, if I send an open to this logic gate, it's going to output and turn on. It's going to feed the triggering actor information to turn on this weather vane to push that exact townsperson down. And we don't want to just keep bombarding it with that triggering actor information again and again, saying on, because we've got a really fast loop going. We only want it to happen once. So what we're also going to say is an output is going to reopen this top logic gate so it closes and it starts dumping that triggering actor information again. This weather vane will still be on, but we're not dumping that information to it constantly. And from an input blocked, we are going to turn that guy off. Makes sense to me. And again, we're going to say an input blocked is going to, again, open that top logic gate. Now we want to do the same here. We want to say an output is going to open him, and an input blocked is also going to open the top one, while an output is going to turn on this top pushing that way weather vane, and the input blocked is going to turn it off. So this logic is turning out pretty good so far. I have obviously used it before, so that's why I know how to do this so easily, because I've used this system many times to move townspeople around. Now the reason we have 3 logic gates here is because I view things in steps. So let's say the signal comes out this logic gate and comes into the input of this logic gate. And it goes out that logic gate. So this was one step. And then it goes out the input blocked into the input of this logic gate. Say that's 2 steps. And then it comes out the input blocked, let's say, to turn off this weather vane, but also to open this logic gate. So that's 3 steps. So it takes 3 steps to set this logic back to the way it should be. And by putting 3 logic gates here, that means I'm not going to send another triggering actor information signal to this logic chain before it is able to close itself. I won't accidentally, if I only had 2 logic gates here, I might be looping so fast that I'd accidentally send 2 signals to this logic gate before it managed to close. So imagine you did a close to turn off this weather vane, and while this guy is still doing its thing to fix the logic here, another signal comes in and it manages to get through the input block to this logic gate just before it gets a signal, and then shoots out the open and turns it back on. Like, it could happen, it probably won't, but I like to make sure that this logic, by having 3 logic gates to pass through, it's never going to double send a signal before this logic chain can fix itself back to its original state that it needs to be in. So that's why there's 3 logic gates there. So there's another thing we actually want to do here. When we have it set to the dynamic trigger, if the AI exits it, it closes this logic gate. And when the signal comes back through the loop to this logic gate, it comes out input blocked, and it opens and opens. But we also want to make sure if a townsperson leaves that dynamic trigger area, what if we were currently moving them down? And now that they've left the trigger area, we've lost control, and they're just going to continually move down and down and down until they fall off the screen. So what we want to do is, if they leave the dynamic trigger area, we want to make sure we turn off both of these weather vanes with their triggering actor information, just to be on the safe side. So what we're going to say is, because we close this guy, and he is still carrying that triggering actor information until it comes out the input block, we're going to use the same input block, which still has that triggering actor information, to turn off that guy and to turn off that guy. And that should be good for now. I'm still curious about what's going to happen later on with these logic chains if an enemy leaves, but we're going to test that out later. This is going to be new ground for us. So we've got that logic in here to move the townspeople around, but of course we have no way, we haven't added controls to do that yet. And we're going to actually add those controls in the next episode, because we're going to add an up and down control in here, and we're also going to really streamline the controls here. They're a little all over the place right now, and I'm going to explain as we're going. We're going to streamline it so that we get the optimal precision control out of this, and of course we'll explain as we're going through that one as to why and how and everything like that. But we actually have put together our logic now so that when an enemy is within this dynamic trigger area, we will gain control of them over here so that we can push them away and towards the camera whenever we want. And we also have set up the controls so that when they leave that trigger area, our system is going to dump their information and quickly reset itself so that it is ready for the next townsperson we get into that trigger area. So I think we're going to leave it there for now. That actually went a little bit faster than I was expecting it to, which is completely okay. And we're going to, I guess, see you in the next episode when we work on the controls, and we will then test to make sure that this system is working. So again, this is Marion, and I hope you all have a great day, and I will see you soon.